In this video, I really need your help. You see, I get a lot of stuff at eWay at great prices. However, sometimes it's difficult for me to identify all the nitty-gritty little things that I do find at eWay. So today, I'm hoping you'll help me identify some of these parts. Some of them will be obvious, some of them maybe not, and I'll even have a surprise at the end. It's coming up right now on Retro Hack Shack After Hours. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Aaron, the faceless person behind the screen. No, I do show my face a couple times, especially on the main channel, a little bit more than I do here. But this is another edition of E-Waste Wednesday. Ooh! And as I alluded to in the intro, I have garnished, if that's the right term, a mountain of e-waste to check out and go over. And these are all things that I found but kind of set aside because either I've already done videos on them recently, or perhaps I don't think that they're going to be anything wrong with this equipment necessarily. And so I just kind of set it aside waiting for a chance to do something with it. And that chance is today. We're going to go through some incredible things that I found at eWaste, starting off right away with these two Atari 2600s. They're both 4-switch models, and they are both very, very dirty. They came to me in this condition. They were actually given to me by a friend, someone that goes to eWaste with me. He had these Atari 2600s and said, do you want to take a look at them? And I said, sure. So these are both 4-switch models, which means the difficulty switch has been moved to the back. But they are still the faux wood grain, which I love. And so there's 3 joysticks and 1 power supply. So we don't have enough for both, but I think I have extra power supplies around. What's up?
Can I have some money for dinner?
Yeah?
Yeah, sure. That works. Sounds good.
All right. Both of these consoles are very dirty and dusty, so they're going to need a complete disassembly and bath. I probably won't do that today. It's not very exciting, but what I do want to do is test each of them and see if they're working, which is why I brought back this TV, because it was just sitting over here. This is one that I did some repair on earlier, but there's still some issues, as you can see here. The colors are weak. Blue is an issue, apparently, and it's doing some underscan. But even with that, we can still at least get an image on this thing and see if these things are working. So we're going to use a period accurate. I think this is like a 1976 Sony Trinitron, if I remember correctly. We'll go ahead and hook this up to the antenna inputs on the back. And to do that, we will use this. It is commonly referred to as a balun, but it is also probably more properly referred to as a matching transformer, and I have an RCA to coax adapter hooked up. It's amazing to me how many people don't realize that you can buy these RF to coax adapters on Amazon for like $10 for $5 or something, and they work perfectly well to connect old computers and consoles that had an RF output. Even to modern TVs, they usually still have a coax input on the back of them, so you can hook them up directly. They're not going to look great when they're stretched out to, 80 inches or something like that, but you can get a cheap adapter and hook these up directly to most modern TVs. The antenna that goes in the back here expects 300 ohm, and so this basically converts the 75 ohm into 300 ohm and makes it all work. And for this test, let's just go ahead and use this. It is the ET cartridge. So we'll plug that in. Hopefully their contacts are not too dirty. And we just need to connect one of these joysticks, which is very, very dirty, but we'll see if it works. You can tell this hasn't been used in a long time because the cable memory is just, I don't know. It's like a telephone cord. Look at that. All right, does the TV still work? Ooh, yes. This is set to channel 3. Let's see if the Atari number 1 is working. No? What's going on here? Plug this into Atari number 2 and see if it's working. Okay. It's plugged in. Let's turn it on. Yeah, nothing. I think I was plugged into UHF and not VHF back here. Okay, let's try system number 1 now with the connection plugged into VHF. Let's see what happens. Oh, it came on. There we go. So we do have a power problem here. With this one does have a power jack issue that I need to replace that jack. But otherwise, it is actually working. And this controller, at least the button is working. Let's see if we can move around. Yep, down, up. A little crunchy, but it's pretty good. Button's working. Go back and forth. Yeah, as expected. These things are pretty rock solid. So this Atari 2600 is working, except I need to either fix a bad solder joint or I need to replace that jack altogether. One of those two things is going on because when I let go, it's got flaky power issues, but it is working. It's working fine. All right. Let's test number 2. All right, system number 2 is connected to power. It's connected in the back to the antenna, and we're getting something, but it doesn't want to start. I think this is probably a bad connection here. Okay, let's try it again. There we go. Yeah, so just a little dust in the cartridge slot there, but yep, totally working so far. Atari is working anyway, and this is the same joystick, so the joystick is a little crusty. I can go up, down, and left, but right does not want to move. Maybe I got a bad wire here. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Again, everything is just super dirty. But other than being dirty, yeah, this thing is working just fine. So both Atari 2600s are good to go. They just need a really good bath. All right, this next one from E-Waste Haul is this box here, and I actually don't know what's in this box. Now, you may be thinking, hey, Aaron, why don't you know what's in the box? Didn't you get it at E-Waste? Well, I did, but that was only because I saw what was in here and I stopped looking immediately and just grabbed the whole box and put it in my pile of stuff to buy for that day. So I think it'll be obvious as we go through here that, you know, what I saw and why I grabbed it. But yeah, I have no idea beyond this top layer. I don't know what is actually in this. So I thought what we do is just go through here and see what's in here, starting with this. This is of course, it's a slot 1 processor. It's got Intel written right there. Heatsink. This is an Intel Pentium 3, and it looks like this is an Intel Pentium 3 500, so probably one of the earlier Pentium 3s. So this will be something good to go through and test. I've got quite a number of them in here, so I don't believe I'll be able to do it today, but I'm definitely going to sit this over here and add it to my inventory of CPUs. Now here's another Pentium 3, but this one has a different fan on it. It's got this bracket that goes through and mounts this heatsink back here. And it's got a little fan on it. It's connected. So unlike this one, which had the case on the back, perhaps this was an aftermarket fan, or perhaps the case came off of this thing. I'm not sure. And it looks like this is indeed another Pentium 3 500. So at some point at E-Waste, or maybe this was brought into E-Waste, somebody was pulling these slot 1 processors out of computers and saving them. Now I see a whole bunch of these, and I think these are boards that convert. What is this socket for? This is PGA 370, and I think what you could do with this is you could put the later processors that weren't slot 1, you could put them into this adapter board, put this into your slot 1 machine, and then put a fan on top of the CPU and get your processor to run that way. You could put like a Celeron processor in here or something like that, stick that into your slot 1, and yeah, this should work. So let's see. Here's one that's slightly different, but also obviously meant for the same purpose. And so far, just digging around, I found 6 of these, and they're all slightly different, or a couple variations, at least 2 or 3 variations here on the same theme. Here's another slot 1 processor. This one is a 450, and it has no fan. It just has a passive cooling fins on the back here. Well, this is interesting. I think people are maybe still doing this. These gold-plated pins, I think they cut them off boards, ISA boards specifically, and then they try to get the gold off them, but there's not much gold on them. So yeah, this just fell out of the box, and that's unfortunate. I hate when people do that. There's quite a few adapters in here as well, and this is one of them. As you can see, it's got PCI down here at the bottom, but it's got DIMMs up here at the top. So if you needed to add memory to your system, this might be a good way to do it. I'll have to look up a little bit more information about this, but it's got capacity for 4 extra DIMMs. I'm not sure if every motherboard supports this or not, or whether this was maybe out of some low profile machine that had to do it this way. But this is pretty interesting. It probably was, because it says HP right there. So this probably came out of some other system where the only way they could fit the memory in because of the low form factor was to do it through a slot like that. But I've got at least 3 of those sitting here. Here's another one of those adapters. This time it's Dell, but it's got 2 PCI slots, so it's a riser card that you would have put this in the socket. It looks like this has PCI plus maybe some additional power or something back here. So you put that in the riser slot, and then that gives you 2 PCI cards that you could plug in to your low profile, desktop system, whatever height that is, 3 or 4 inches tall. And my eyes aren't serving me well here, but I think this says copyright 2003, 2004. So that tells us what era this is from. Now there's a number of things that are still in their original packaging here. So let's get this out and see what it is. Okay. So this is a socket. It's got pins on the bottom and pins on the top. So that obviously goes into a socket. It looks like maybe that goes into like a 386 system or something. Let's see what this says. 486 upgrade adapter smart socket. Yeah, so here we go. 486 upgrade adapter smart socket registration card. So this is a smart socket for, I guess, a 386 board. And you would pop this into pop a 486 into here. I'm sure it only supported certain ones. Put that in your 386 socket, and you could have an upgrade to a 486. This is by Aries Electronics. Let me know in the comments below if you bought one of these from Aries Electronics. But there it is. It's just got a little voltage regulator on it and some capacitors and things like that. Maybe there's some pins that need to get routed or something like that. But I think it's very similar to the 386 and 486, except for different voltages and things. So yeah, that's great to have. I don't have one of these. All right, here's something else in a bag, completely new, never been opened. Let's just go ahead and open it and see what it is. Hope I'm not breaking too many people's hearts by opening something that is completely virgin here. All right, so this is a MediaVision SCSI adapter. Very cool. So I'm guessing this takes an external SCSI. You plug this into the back of your PC, hook up your external SCSI with your audio, SCSI CD, and then you can hook up internally to a SCSI adapter. So you could adapt from an internal connection to an external connection using the 25 pin connector here. I think that's 25 pins. Anyway, that's really cool. Brand new, never been opened. Mint condition. Awesome. All right, well, there's several boards that are similar to this one, so I'm going to treat them as a group. And there's a huge heatsink on here, and it looks like it plugs into a socket. And then it's got a bunch of like power transistors on here and coils. So I don't know. Is this some sort of power regulator? When I tried to use Google Lens to look this up, it said it was some sort of voltage regulator for a ProLiant server. Does that make sense? Does anybody know? I don't know exactly what this thing is. At first I thought it was maybe a cache module. There's no cache. There's no memory on here. It's all just power related stuff. So I'm not real familiar with this, but I've got quite a number of them, or things that are similar. Here's another one that I found. Again, it looks like it's kind of a similar looking thing, a bunch of power regulators. So yeah, if you know what these are, please let me know in the comments below. And I'm finding a number of cache cards, as I mentioned before, like I thought those other things were. They have a similar looking connection down here, but these are definitely cache cards, and they say right on them, this one's 128 megs, 256 megs, or some sort of memory card anyway. These are HP branded. This one's HP branded. These, I'm not sure. They've got another connector on the top here. Here's an interesting one. This one is kind of like a non-volatile RAM kind of thing, where it's 128 megs and it looks like a cache card of some sort. But then on the back, it's got, let me turn this over, see if the electrons fall out. This is a HP branded battery pack on this side. So I'm assuming that this was for whatever was stored in the memory. And you could store stuff in here and then, keep it backed up as long as this battery pack would last. So that's pretty cool. I'm sure it doesn't have a charge now, but maybe there's a use for this. Maybe someone needs one of this for a vintage computer. I don't know. There's also a ton of these drive components. So yeah, somebody was just collecting spare parts at this point. There's just hard drive. There's a SCSI hard drive board. So I don't know what somebody's going to do with this. There's a floppy drive connector to connect to a ribbon cable on this end with the, if you only had a floppy cable, ribbon style cable with the slot on it, you could convert that into the 34-pin normal floppy with this little adapter here. Those are always nice to have. All right, I've gone through the rest of the box and kind of sorted things out. Let me just show you a few interesting things I found, starting with this. So this is a Terminator, slot 1 Terminator card. So if you had a dual CPU system with 2 slots, but you only had 1 CPU in it, you would put this in the other slot as a Terminator, right? So that it wasn't just empty. It actually had something in it. And I've got a couple of those. So if I ever get a dual slot 1 system and I only have 1 processor, I can use one of those on that. There's a couple of strange adapters. Not sure what this is. If you know what this is, comment down below. It seems to be some sort of a right angle adapter for something with a big chunky connector on it. Let me know if you know what that is. Similarly, there's a couple other random kind of ad hoc connectors. This one I'm really interested in because it has a 44 pin, I think this is, 44 pin connector up here that would go to like a mini hard drive or something. But then it has this connector down here, which is a card edge connector. And, you know, the signals are just routed down, but I'm not sure what that would plug into. Let me know if you can figure out what that is. Let me know in the comments below. Now, I know this, I'm saying this and it's not going to be true, but it could be the world's smallest PCI network card. It's got a network chip on here, a few capacitors, and a network port. So that's kind of interesting. You could hide this away in a really small form factor PC or something. I don't know what speed it is. I'm not going to look it up right now, but yeah, pretty cool. Here's something you don't see every day. It's a DLP processor, kind of like a CMOS sensor or something going on there for like a projector or something. Yeah, it's got kind of a weird connection on the back. I think I looked this up and it appears to be for DLP projectors, rear projector TVs or something. It's kind of cool. There's a bunch of GPS or Wi-Fi cards that would go, that would go into a device that, you wanted to add, maybe a laptop you wanted to add GPS to. I also found 8 of these. These are 1 gig SSDs, basically. They have a 44-pin connector on them, so I don't know if they go with that connector I saw earlier, but it's a female connector. So, most of the time, I think when you have a 2.5-inch hard drive, for example, it would be a male connector on this end, and then that would plug into your laptop or whatever. This is female. So I need to see if I can find an adapter for this. Maybe I can use this to plug into, instead of plugging in an ID hard drive, maybe I could use this and plug in instead if I can get the right adapter. That way, when I'm doing testing and things like that, this would be a really nice. 1 gig is a good size for vintage PCs. Pentium, Windows 95, Windows 98, XP. I think that would all be pretty good for something like this. And last but not least, I have a couple of processors. Here is a Motorola PowerPC G3. So this must have come out of a Macintosh at some point. You can see the cache modules there and the processors, multiple. And yeah, it looks like it's in good shape. So got a spare G3 now to use if I get a Mac where the processor's blown. Well, assuming this one's good. And focus. Last but not least, another processor. This is an AMD 586. And I think it says 75 on there. I'm not sure. I can't really see it. But I believe this is a 75 megahertz AMD 586 that I believe would plug into a socket 7 machine and turn it into a screaming demon. So I'll definitely have to try this out and see if this is any good. Looking at all of these PCBs reminds me to thank the sponsor of this episode, PCBWay. PCBWay offers low-cost, high-quality prototype PCBs and a whole lot more. In fact, they sponsor a lot of channels here on YouTube, so you should really check them out for your PCB prototyping needs. And I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack After Hours. All right, so I went through the other boxes that were down here as well, and I've got everything else sorted out. So let me go handheld, and we can cover the rest of what I found pretty quickly, at least more quickly than me holding it up every time. And I'm only saving the interesting bits, the pieces of old hard drives and things like that. I've weeded all that stuff out now. So there's more cache cards that I found. We saw those earlier. And then there was a whole bunch of different processors. These are actually all NVIDIA processors. I'm not sure exactly which ones, but the chips, when you get the thermal paste off of there, these are all NVIDIA's. And then down here, there is Apple chips. So these are Apple G4s. These are Apple G3s. And then this is really interesting. This is like something that came off the assembly line, like before it was put into a package or something. I'm really going to have to do some research to figure out what this is. I may never know what it is. It may not be a processor. I just put it over here with the processors. So yeah, I'm not sure what this actually is, but you can see the die there, and you can see all of the chip legs coming out of it, and it looks really cool. There's no markings on it, so I have no idea what that particular IC is or was supposed to be. And then down here we have some Sun processors, and these are great because they're the full boards. They have these really interesting heat sinks on them. They kind of screw on. You can see this one doesn't have one on there, but you could put one on there if you could find one. And yeah, these are Sun Spark, Super Spark, cache controller, and TMS 390 microcontroller. So yeah, this is a CPU board for a Sun Spark system. Really, really cool. And then down here I found some memory. I don't know what this board is. Google's trying to tell me that it's some sort of an Apple AirPod thing, but I don't think so, because when you go in here, it looks like a dev board. When you go in here and look at it, over on this side, it tells you what each section of the board does. And then on this side, it's got everything outlined. So it tells you exactly, oh, this is the power section, that's the power section, and so forth. So I don't believe that's what this is. If anybody knows what it is, please let me know in the comments below. I also found some more adapters, so hard drive adapters, and I think maybe with one of these I can test out some of those SSDs that we found earlier. I found a bunch more right angle, including some PCIX right angle adapters, or riser cards basically, but they only have one port on them. There's a left and a right here actually, which is interesting. And then I even found some ISA right angle adapters, which is pretty cool. This one, I have no idea what this one is. It's got a bunch of pins, and it's not really a right angle adapter, although it looks like one. It looks more like a terminator of some sort. It's got a bunch of pins here. Let me know if you know what that is. I also found a bunch of test rigs. So these have different ports on them, and then they break out to all of these different pinouts here with different testing. So I guess, this would be something that you would use if you were doing QA checking or something like that. And this one here is really cool. So if you can see up here, this says Silicon Graphics. I think it says 1991. So this would have been used, you put this in a socket, I guess, and you could probe around and test, various test pads for testing out Silicon Graphics machine from 1991. That's really cool. Oh, and I love the name here. Silicon Graphics Death something up here, Death Top. That's pretty cool. Last but not least, I found an Apple II disk controller, one of the original Apple II disk controllers, so I can test that out at some point. And then just some more floppy connectors. All right, well, I've got all that stuff sorted out, and I just wanted to test some of these drives to see if they actually still work and whether they still have data on them. And luckily, I found that one of the connectors that I pulled out of that box was a male-to-male adapter, and it's made for a 2.5-inch hard drive, that's kind of like this here, that would go in a laptop or something like that. It's the same kind of connector. The problem is that all of these that I have have a female end on them. And so in order to use something like this, which is a USB adapter, and it tests IDE and SATA drives and things like that, this is female and this is female. So without one of these male-to-male connectors, there's really no way to test it. On a motherboard, you're going to have a male header probably, and so this could go right on it if you had the right size. It also, some of these have a little jumper on them. This one is has 1, 2, 3, 4. I assume this is for maybe slave and master. I'm not sure. We'll find out maybe in a minute if it makes any difference. But the other thing I had to do was on the adapter, I had to cut off one of the pins because there is a a key pin to make sure that you don't plug this in the wrong way. This one had all of the pin headers there. And so what I had to do is find pin 1 on the board and then map that through to pin 1 on the adapter and then map that through to pin 1 on the USB adapter to make sure that I was getting this right. And I think I've got this mapped out correctly. So I went ahead and cut the little key so that this will actually fit in now, because there is a plug in one of the pinholes here. And so without cutting the pin down, it wouldn't fit in. All that to say, I think I've done enough work to try to get this thing to work on my laptop. Okay, it's unfortunate that the way this thing connects means that this thing is down. So this is now resting on the device here. Don't like that, but it's just the way it is. All right, let's go ahead and turn it on. Hopefully it just works. Oh, I heard a da-donk. Yep. So at this point, I actually lost my audio, but let me tell you what I found on these SSDs. There was a Windows directory with files like NT, DLR, and NT detect. So this was obviously running some sort of fairly modern operating system, i.e. Windows NT, Windows 2000, something similar to that, maybe a scaled down version. And the types of files that I found on this thing had to do with things like touch displays and remote access. And so I think what these came out of were some sort of a point of sale device, maybe that you might find at a restaurant or at a department store or something like that, because all the applications, and there were very few of them, were designed for that type of thing. There was a desktop. There weren't any documents or Word files or anything like that on these. So whatever this was, it was minimal, and I'm guessing it was a point of sale device. All right, up next, I've got kind of another mystery here. It's some sort of specialized mechanical keyboard. I found this the other day. It is missing a few keys, but it's got these really interesting switches. Have to see if we can look this up and see what kind of switches they are. And it appears to be an AT keyboard because it has a 5-pin DIN, and there's a little marker up here in the case. There's like a little divot where there could be a switch to go back and forth from XT to AT, but it's not there. So I'm guessing this is a AT keyboard. Maybe we can try this out in a second, but first let me zoom in so you can get a look and help me try to figure out what this keyboard was used for. So just look at this keyboard with all of those colorful keys. It is missing a few keycaps. Perhaps I can find some replacements for those online, but I doubt I'll be able to find these exact ones because they look very specific for a very particular purpose. And you see that some of them are labeled film counter, play, stop, gang. This all points to a keyboard that was modified to be used with some sort of video editing. Even over here on the numpad, there's a button that says half feet. So I don't know if that was the Hobbit button or something like that. But yeah, all of these keys seem to point to some sort of video editing or perhaps a video switching tool that would be used in a studio, something like that. It is very elaborate with multiple functions per key. I also found it really interesting. They had this warning label here that says some experts believe that the use of any keyboard may cause serious injury. Consult statement on back of this keyboard. So we better have a look at the back and see what that looks like. For those label aficionados, here you go. You can get the FCC ID, the model number, the part number, the serial number. And yeah, there's even this little label down here that says, yes, it works with NetWare, tested and approved. That thing was everywhere in the mid to late 90s. Just about anything you bought had that, yes, it works with Novell NetWare. Fun times. And over here we get that caution warning sticker, and this is really comprehensive. It really tells you exactly what the problem is. And my guess is that a lot of people I remember during this time were getting carpal tunnel syndrome from using keyboards so much more than they had before. It became quite a problem in the 90s and early 2000s. I remember several people going in for surgery and things and wearing those braces. So I guess this was a problem at the time, and maybe they just wanted to cover their own backsides, so to speak. All right, I just grabbed the first motherboard that I could find that had an AT input on it, and here we go. Got a monitor hooked up and everything, so let's turn it on and see if the keyboard actually works. I got the standard flashing lights. I believe that means that from a keyboard standpoint, things are looking fine. Let's just boot this up and see if we get any keystrokes. Okay, well, this is a problem. I've got to remember where the delete key is. Is it this one? Yes. Okay. So number one, that's working. Arrow keys are working. Can go in here, move around. I'm not going to go ahead and I'm not going to boot up the whole and test every key and, you know, do all that kind of stuff, because this is, I don't want this to take too long. But it appears, I mean, at least from moving the arrows around and whatnot, that the keyboard itself is functional. Maybe there's a sticky key or something, but it does appear to be working from what I can tell. The Y key works. And I did look this up. It does have an entry on Desk Authority, which is a great resource for information about keyboards. And this, according to the model number, it's an Asian 101 layout, and it was built during the mid-90s. Now, it doesn't say anything about these customizable keys, but it does give us the name of these key switches, which I hope you could see when I zoomed in here. They're very interesting key switches, but guess what they're called? High-tech Space Invader switches. Space Invader switches. That is so cool. I don't know if it's because of the way they look, but they feel really excellent. They're a little bit stiff, but very clicky. They have a click, and, you know, they're kind of like blue switches, the modern custom keyboard switches, the cherry blues that you might find, or the ones that I love. They feel a little bit like the Alps SCKL, I think is what they're called, amber switches that are in the Apple IIc keyboard, the nice keyboards that have this clicky feel. Something like that. They're very clicky, very nice. And yeah, if you know what this is used for, please let me know in the comments below. All right, guys. Well, I can't wait to read all of your suggestions down below for what all this stuff is. But this I saved, maybe the best for last. I don't know. Depends what you're into. But there's one type of TV that everybody wants for their retro gaming consoles. It's a particular brand and a particular type that was very famous in the 80s and 90s. That's right. If you are into retro gaming, you definitely want to pick up one of these. It's the Naxa. Just kidding. It's not the Naxa, but I won't play too much of a gag on you. I actually do have another TV that is in that category. Let's go ahead and pull it up here. It's so cool. Yes, that's right. It is a Sony Trinitron. It's a miniature Sony Trinitron. In fact, I saw this in the pile of TVs, and I am so lucky that this has a detachable power cord that was just coiled up here by the original owner, I'm guessing, so they couldn't cut it off. Because sometimes, even if the power cord is detachable at e-waste, they will just cut it off anyway and leave this dangling part in there because they don't bother to check whether it's can even pull out. But most of the time, they will just cut those things off, throw them away, and then I have to go in and fix them if I want to save these TVs. And look at this. They also put, so this must be from the original owner too. Oh, cool. So this is an antenna connector that must go on the back. We'll take a look at the back in a minute, but that is a coax balun. Yes, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, a coax balun that goes to a 300 ohm input, and then that goes to, I'm sure, an antenna input on the back of this set. So cool. That's probably came with the set or something. I'm sure this was from the original owner, so I'm glad to have that. I'm going to set these things aside for now. Oh, and it has a little button up here. It looks like it says USB, but that can't be. I wonder if this is for the handle. Whoa! Oh, hey! Wow! What? What the heck? It has a little hood, and when you press the button, the hood comes out. So I'm wondering if this was used in the field for maybe, you know, expensive Sony cameras and things like that. When people were doing video work, maybe they would take a set like this along with them. And it had this nice little hood that would come out and shield the sun, shield the glare and stuff so that they could actually see what was going on this tiny little screen. So cool. Now, I'm not going to go into this Naxa thing here, but this is actually pretty cool too. I'm not going to turn it on and go over it. I got this because it was so cute. I mean, look how small that is. You know, it's literally like maybe 6 inches this way. and maybe 6, so maybe a 6x6x6 cube. It's got a black and white CRT. It's got radio on it and earphones, volume, change the channel up there. It's got the antenna. They didn't whack that off, thank goodness. And on the back here, it looks like it is black and white, so that's okay. And then it's got a antenna input, external antenna input, it looks like. A power connector, probably 12 volts. It's got audio and video composite inputs. That's really cool. It's got a switcher for like AV or antenna input, depending on what you want to do. And then it's got some screen controls over here. So this might be really cool for a mod or something. It takes battery back here. I don't know. I can't quite get that open. Maybe you have to undo these screws or something. But yeah, this is just a really cute little set. So I'll be playing with this later. But let's turn our attention back to one of the smallest Sony Trinitrons I have ever seen. So it's got an earphone jack on this side, double earphone jack. So this is looking, I don't know when this came out, but I mean, just based on the logo, the fact that it has a double earphone jack, I would say maybe early 80s for this one. It's got 14 selectable channels up here with these little buttons. It's got a volume control up here as well, a power button it looks like too. And by the way, this thing weighs probably, I don't know, 15, 20 pounds. I think it has a built-in battery pack down here as well because it's way too heavy. I can barely lift it with my arm outstretched like that. Way too heavy for just a standard TV. So I think it's got the battery pack back here, and there is a switch here to go from charging to operational mode. It's got looks like a vertical hold up there. I'm sure this is for this antenna up here to plug in, and this is where this little ballon thing that we saw earlier would go, that would plug in there, and then you could either plug in another antenna for UHF, I believe, or you could plug in coax input there too. And we've got the model number. I think it's a KV5200. You have to forgive my eyes if that's wrong. And then also, over here on the side, there's this little pouch. I thought this was maybe like a battery thing, but no, it's like a little pouch. It's not a pouch. It's a little door that comes down, and it has automatic fine tuning off or on. It's got a picture knob to control picture setting. It's got hue, it's got color, it's got brightness, and that's all on the side there. That's a cool switch. It's like a literal like toggle switch. That's awesome. So what I thought we'd do is just go ahead and hook this up to my Atari since that's sitting over here, and we can see whether this thing is still working. Hopefully the batteries aren't an issue in these things, but I'll go ahead and plug it in. I'll get the balance set up, and we can see if we get anything on the screen. Yeah, and this connector is actually, it's like one of those figure 8 connectors, but only the figure 8's on one side. It's a very special connector. Maybe it's common in Japan, I don't know. But I definitely would not have had this if, that doesn't seem to want to go in there very well. Okay, well, it's very springy in the back. I'm not 100% sure we're not going to get some sort of magic smoke or something out of this. Nothing imploded immediately when I plugged it in, so I guess let's just go ahead and turn it on, see what happens. I heard power. I think I hear high voltage. Yes, it is working, but I'm going to have to go in and fix that plug because I'm afraid that plug is maybe only held on with one screw or something, and it's very precarious back there. But let's just go ahead and turn this to channel 3 and see if we get anything. Oh no, I'm pretty sure. Oh, sound's working. I'm pretty sure. Oh, there's maybe something. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've got the Atari powered on. Wonder if this could be set for UHF, just like that other one was. Maybe there's a UHF VHF setting on this thing. You might not be able to see it, but there's a green LED here on the bottom that comes on when I turn it on. Ooh, I don't know if you guys saw that. Definitely have to be careful. It just shorted. Luckily it came back on, but I hit the power cord. So yeah, this is not very happy. Gotta be very careful. I wonder if there's something wrong with these buttons down here or something. Maybe they're not hitting the tuner right, because it's almost getting an image down here. It's like, yeah, this might have to be a repair video because it looks like it's getting an image. I know that the Atari is working. I hooked up to another TV to test it, and it's looking the same whether it's on 2 or 3. So it's kind of like, what if I hold the button down? Does that do anything? I was kind of hoping it would like tune in, but I'm wondering if maybe the tuner is going bad because I don't see anything else here. AFT does nothing. I don't see anything else here that maybe if I got the manual, there's some setting somewhere that you press a combination of buttons and it tunes. There's no dial. So I don't know. I think this, between the power problem that it definitely has, I found out the hard way, and the fact that it's not tuning in, channel 3 here. Oh, see, now channel 3 looks different. Channel 2 still looks like that, but channel 3 looks different. Okay, well, enough of that. I don't want to risk this TV anymore. This looks like it might be something kind of special. It needs some heavy duty cleaning. So I am going to walk away from this now and unplug it right now so that there's no more shorts. Let capacitors drain, and we will come back to this another day. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing this. Let me know your thoughts on it. 5-inch Sony Trinitron portable set, I assume used for professional work in the field, but again, I don't know. It doesn't have any composite or special inputs on it. It's just the antenna input. So very, very cool. Really happy to find this at eWaste. All right, now you probably want to know what the total was. Sometimes I mentioned I'm going to tell you the total and I forget to put it in, but I really am going to do it this time. So what I did was I kind of went back in my head and either, divided things up in my brain in terms of what I paid. I know I paid $5 for each of these TVs, so that's $10. And then I believe the keyboard and all the things that were in that box were $20, and then the Ataris were free from a friend of mine. So everything that I showed you here today came up to a grand total of $30. That's right, $30 at eWaste. I am so lucky to have a place like that where I can go find all of this cool stuff and show here on the channel. I hope you enjoyed that today. Thanks to all my patrons. I hope you enjoyed looking at this today. Thank you in advance for putting all of your suggestions for what these things might be or what I got wrong down in the comments below. I'm going to put a video right over here that you might want to watch next with all of my eWaste stuff on it so that you can go look at that. And I'll see you in that video next. Bye-bye.
End of line.